New York Jets OTAs, Dalvin Cook, Aaron Rodgers, so much to get into, and we're going to do it right now here on the show. Zoinks! It is unequivocally the Super Bowl for New York Jet fans.
Field Yates, baby. Field Gosh darn Yates. Let's bring him on the show.
Come on, people. Connor Rodgers is joining the show. What's up, Connor? But Trevor Gosh darn Sycamore, baby, for me, personally, my favorite New York Jet of all time.
Wow, it's great to be on. What an intro that was right there.
Paul, nobody does an intro like you, man.
Paul, you give the best intro of literally any podcast that I've ever.
I'm gonna lose my gosh darn bananas.
What's up, everybody? My name is Paul Esden Jr., a.k.a. Boy Green. I'm the New York Jets digital reporter for Heavy.com, and let's waste no more time. We're going to dive right into it with the latest on all things New York Jets, OTAs, drama, and rumors all over the place. And it's his second time joining the show. It's been a while. Let's bring him in. Andy Vasquez of NJ Advanced Media joining us here on the program. Andy, what's up, brother?
How's it going, man? Good to see you. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Of course. So let's dive in, I guess, to the latest thing that happened is Dalvin Cook gets released today by the Minnesota Vikings, and there's been a little bit of rumors and speculation today. Bookies.com dropping that the Jets are the favorites to land Dalvin Cook. There was the report from Darren Wolfson, who mostly does work covering the Minnesota Vikings. He said that a surprise team that has kind of jumped into the mix from things he was hearing is the New York Jets. Andy, what do you make of all this? Is this nonsense? Does this potentially make sense? What say you, Andy?
Well, I think it definitely could make sense when you look at what's happening with Breece Hall. I mean, I know it's very exciting that he's looking good and recovering from that torn ACL, but it is going to be like 10 months, maybe a little bit more than 10 months since it happened week one. And I just don't think the Jets are, even if he looks great, they're not going to have a full workload for him. He's not going to be getting the 20 plus touches a game. So, I think it could make sense. I mean, obviously there's financial considerations and, I don't think the Jets would like to make a trade if they can claim him when the Vikings end up cutting him. So it's kind of going to be interesting to see how that works out. And if another team is maybe going to pony up to trade for him. But yeah, I mean, it could definitely make sense. And I've thought, all offseason that it wouldn't be surprising if the Jets kind of brought in a guy who was a proven running back just because of the situation that they're in, where they're going to be relying heavily on, Michael Carter, who obviously did not have a great year last year, and a rookie. So in addition to Breece. So yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense for the Jets to pursue any available option at running back, even though they're going to say they love their running back room.
Rich Cimini said on Sunday that throughout the totality of this offseason to date, the Jets have created over $45 million in available cap space with restructures. If not Dalvin Cook, what the hell is this pile of big money for the New Year? Is it just a rainy day fund? If something unexpected happens at some point, they will be more prepared than most teams for that? Or do they actually have a plan to use these finances on something?
Well, I think you still got to see how the Aaron Rodgers thing kind of plays out. And they have, I don't know. I haven't looked lately at the available cap. I don't think, it's still probably somewhere around 25, which puts them near the top. But I want to see how it looks after the Rodgers thing goes through. And obviously, I don't think the Quinnen extension is going to have a huge cap hit for this season. But, if they want to add some guys during the season, it closes up a little quicker than you think. But yeah, I mean, I think this is what you've got to do. I mean, they're going for it. They're basically all in, and you've got to, make moves that are going to help you. So I think, yeah, I mean, I don't know if Dalvin Cook is specific. Maybe they're looking for another weapon or, receiving weapon or a guy on defense that, maybe we haven't thought of yet, or somebody who's available in a trade. A lot of this stuff kind of happens with guys who you don't realize they're available until it happens. So I think there's still enough time before the season where you don't got to be like, this money's burning a hole in your pocket. But yeah, I mean, I also get what you're saying. This would be a good opportunity for them for sure.
What's the delay in the Aaron Rodgers restructure? So obviously there was a mini portion of the restructure to make the trade possible, and then almost the understanding like, hey, we're going to have to relook at this before the season starts. But now we're here in June, and now we're getting to the end before there's really nothing until training camp. What's the delay in all of this in your mind?
In my mind, I don't know for sure, but I would imagine this. They don't have to get it done. There's not a hurry to get it done until, you got to get it done at some point before the start of the regular season. So I think they're going to kind of wait and see. And, obviously there's a couple guys who are candidates for restructures like CJ Mosley and Corey Davis. And I think, it's highly likely that both those guys will also be restructured. So I think you're kind of waiting for those dominoes to fall and the Quinnen extension before the Rodgers thing. I don't think it's anything like to be alarmed about or worried about. I am interested to see how it all works out, but yeah, I don't think like it really matters at this stage of the offseason that they don't have it done yet.
Again, we're speaking with Andy Gashgard Vasquez, baby. Make sure you follow him on the Twitter sphere at Andy_Vasquez, covering the New York Jets for NJ Advanced Media here on the program. Try to help me with this, Andy, because so they're chasing OBJ, which, by the way, I was all for. Yeah, baby. Sex appeal, star power, another guy catching footballs. Not going to hear me complaining about more pass catchers. That's great. But they missed out on that for whatever reason. Baltimore ends up getting him. So when Hopkins became available, I'm like, well, if you were interested in OBJ, why wouldn't you be interested in Hopkins? He's been better than OBJ over the last 3 years. Quite frankly, he's been better than him than his entire career when you look statistically. So when a guy became available and Robert Saleh, basically, I mean, you were in the room. I mean, he brushed it off like, nah, I love my group. We didn't love your group not enough to not pursue OBJ, but all of a sudden you love your group now. It seemed a little weird. I don't know.
I mean, I just think if you kind of read the tea leaves, everything he's talked about with the Jets has not been like he wants to be here. He lists his favorite quarterbacks and he leads with the division rival and Josh Allen. When there was the video where, somebody said the Jets and everybody reacted to his body language. And once again, when it was like a few days before that when the Josh Allen thing happened. So I think it's like kind of, Saleh reading the room and maybe being realistic about the possibilities. I mean, the Jets would be foolish not to kick the tires on him. I mean, personally, like, why wouldn't you try to make a trade with the Cardinals before they released him if you can get him for almost nothing? I mean, I understand, again, salary cap considerations, but like we just talked about, you've got the room to do that. And, I don't know what the history or relationship is between him and Rodgers either. Maybe there's something there.
Sure.
But I just think there's a lot of signs that point to it's not happening. But I think the Jets would be stupid to not kick the tires on him. And especially considering that he wants to go to Buffalo, which is your division rival. You better make it harder for them to get him, or at least raise the price, or if anything else, like be in it for that.
That's exactly the reason why, both for Hopkins and Cook, for that matter, the teams that have been mentioned for Cook are Miami Dolphins, for all he's a former Florida State product and all those connections. And then also, kind of lightly the Bills because of his brother. And then the other side, Hopkins, the same thing. There's been Bills, there's been New England mentioned, or even one of the top AFC competitors would still somehow affect the Jets with what they plan to do for the season. So, man, the Jets better be right. Like if they have no interest in Hopkins or Cook in this matter, you better be right, because if you're wrong, you may be getting the business at some point this season or in some critical game down the line where the person you skipped out on is helping an immediate rival that could haunt you ghost later in the season, maybe.
That stuff like that never happens to the Jets, though. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah. So they should be safe from that perspective. Do they
No,
really love?
It's a good point.
Do they really love Corey Davis, though? So, like, they say they love him, but, like, if they're approaching him with a cap restructure of some kind, they don't love him that much. And then also the OBJ thing, I imagine if they would have brought him in, Corey Davis would have been the fallout guy. So, do they really love him? Are they kind of waiting to see, well, we really love him, and just kind of looking around to see if anything else presents itself that they could potentially switch him with? Because of the minimal dead cap hit, in theory, they could pull the rug out from under him and have that bag of money on top of whatever money they do have to upgrade the receiver position if they see fit.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have no problem having Corey Davis on the roster, but clearly, I mean, at this point, it's gone so long that they have all the leverage in the situation too, like where his options, like they're in control because they can offer a guarantee that's like still going to be probably more than anybody else offers, and be able to do that in the restructuring. So, and it's not restructuring really, it's a pay cut. So I think the fact that it's kind of strung out this long tells the story there and on how they feel about it. And I think they'd be totally fine with going into the season with him. But I think if they can get someone who's better at a better cost, they're going to do it, and they should. That's the way it works. And it's not that Corey Davis hasn't been a good teammate. It just hasn't worked out these first 2 years the way anybody saw it working out. And it's not that he hasn't made some contributions. It just hasn't, he hasn't been the number one guy that they thought they were getting.
All right, Andy, let's get into some offensive line drama. The moment that Dwayne Brown said, hey, baby, I'm coming back for year 17, at that very moment, I'm like, well, Mekhi Becton's screwed because Dwayne has only played left tackle in the NFL. And if Robert Saleh has continued to say, I'm playing the best 5, I think Dwayne's one of the best 5. And if he's one of the best 5 and he can only play left tackle, well, I mean, what are we talking about here? So my question leading in that, if you believe everything that I just said, man, Mekhi Becton, who made it as clear as day to Newsday that he thought he was misplayed at right tackle and doesn't want to play right tackle, that sounds like there could be a very contentious situation, especially if he's not even really going to get an opportunity, especially with what Saleh said, what was it, this week or last week, that, Dwayne's going to be a pretty hard guy to knock off. Let's see. Whoa, I don't know. I'm sensing some potential drama here that could unfold. Andy, are you reading the same tea leaves?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm Mekhi, I like Mekhi, and I've been, you're rooting for him because he's obviously been through some tough stuff, and he's clearly done a lot to get his body back in shape, and good for him. But he hasn't played a game in 2 years. I mean, he hasn't played a full game since 2020. He's never finished a game in front of a crowd, and you can't. First of all, like, it's hard to trust you at left tackle. It's not any fault of your own really at this point, but like, how are the Jets going to go into their first season with Aaron Rodgers, with a guy who hasn't been able to stay healthy at left tackle, when you have a guy who is, even though he suffered a very serious injury last year, still played 10 games or 12 games at a very high level. So first of all, that's a tough one. And I've thought that all along, like, it's going to be really tough if Dwayne Brown is back for Mekhi Becton to get in at left tackle. And the focus for Mekhi should just be like finishing a game or a couple or a month. And I know that sounds like harsh, but it's also true. That's got to be the focus. And I don't know if there's something to what he said about being on that side, put more stress on his knee. I mean, I'm sure there is something to that, but also, that's kind of part of being a young tackle and trying to find a role, is that you've got to be able to adjust these situations. So I don't think it's a great move for him in terms of if he wants to contribute to this team to kind of put himself on an island there. And especially when he hasn't played in a couple of years. But yeah, I don't see Dwayne Brown getting unseated, especially because the head coach has said he's going to be a tough out. And I don't even know, like, if Mekhi Becton's the best option at right tackle when you look at some of the guys on this line. Again, it's not to say he doesn't have Pro Bowl potential and that he wasn't great as a rookie, but it's been 2 full years where he hasn't played. So and how do you build up that trust in training camp when you're going to be on a limited workload? So it's a very interesting situation. And I think what you said at the top, like, yeah, there's going to be drama during training camp, and it's going to be very rarely do you get the offensive line as one of the most compelling storylines going to the season, but it's really compelling. I know the Jets haven't made the big name additions that people thought they should or wanted to on the line, but I think their line is way deeper and better than it was. And I would be a lot less worried about it this year if I were a Jets fan.
What's your sense on this? So let's say it plays out that way, that obviously Dwayne appears to be the left tackle. He is the left tackle. We get to training camp and the Jets say, hey, Mekhi, here's the right tackle job. Again, to your point, someone else could certainly claim that job. But just in this scenario, hey, here's the starting right tackle job, Mekhi. Does he take it and say, whatever, I'm in the last year of my deal, I'm just going to take this right tackle job and play the best I can, and you know what, I'll just let bygones be bygones? Or does he go, F that, I'm not playing right tackle, I told you guys already, and then forces some situation where either demands a trade or God knows what could happen? What's your sense of those two potential options if that was the scenario in training camp?
Honestly, I think either one is completely possible. I think it's going to depend on like, it's unpredictable. I mean, given what he said, and he doesn't seem to be backing off of it. And then obviously the team isn't backing off it. And Saleh also said something interesting last week when he was talking about Dwayne Brown. And I don't think it was a coincidence when he said that, Dwayne doesn't feel like he's entitled to anything. Very specifically said that. I think there was something to that. And I know the Jets are really happy with the way Becton has worked, but I would imagine they're of the same opinion that I am, is that this guy should just focus on being healthy wherever he's at. So I don't know. I think anything is possible. I think it's tough. It's a tough one for Mekhi because he needs a chance to kind of prove that he can stay out there. So I would lean toward him taking that option, but I don't know what's going to happen. The option to stay out there, but it's the Jets, and they've had some very interesting stuff happen with trade requests from draft picks recently. So we'll have to see what happens. But yeah, it's going to be very compelling.
Let me present one more scenario for you that I find fascinating here in the offensive line thing. And that's Dwayne, when he was asked, hey, you going to be ready for training camp? He was non-committal. From Rich Cimini, it seems that Becton is further along in his own rehab, obviously, because he's coming off a devastating injury of his own, but he's expected to be ready for training camp. So I ask you this, Andy. We get to training camp, and again, all the stuff of, well, Dwayne's our left tackle. Well, if he's not ready, do you put on some facade and you plug in some randos at left tackle? Because in theory, if Mekhi's ultimately going to be playing right, you'd probably want him to be practicing it right, not playing left and then Dwayne's healthy. Okay, now you're back to right. So instead of the musical chairs, it may make sense in theory for the Jets to plug anyone in at left tackle, Max Mitchell, whoever, and then keep that going until Dwayne's healthy, and then you just have one flip instead of potentially multiple. Does that make sense? Is that crazy? Because that kind of throws a crazy monkey wrench into all of this with Dwayne's health status heading into camp.
Yeah, imagine that if Dwayne Brown isn't healthy, and then the Jets refuse to put Mekhi at left tackle, which seems crazy, but also like, oh, you can see it happening because of what you just said. And they don't want to shift everybody around. And then if they're really talking about the best five, at what point is it like, hey, Connor McGovern, if you put him at guard and the rookie at center, and then you put Vera Tucker, I'm one of the tackles. You know what I'm saying? There are a lot, and that's why, by the way, I think the Jets' depth and potential of this offensive line is so much better than before. I mean, it hinges on Vera Tucker in a big way, and he's coming off the injury, but he just makes, like, if they whiff on, if Dwayne Brown isn't the same, or Mekhi Becton, or both, like, they have a path forward, which is, with better options than in the years past. So that's compelling. And I think it's hard for me to see that, like, them not letting Becton get the reps over there. Right. It's also hard to see, like, him winning the right tackle job then, because Rodgers has a lot of trust with Billy Turner, and it's going to be very interesting.
All right, let me ask you. So you brought up Rodgers. We've waited 17 minutes before we've dove into him in full breath here. So let me ask you, as a guy that's been covering the NFL and the Jets for a long period of time here, like, Aaron Rodgers is almost, especially for us fans, he's like this. I can't even imagine. Like, I'm talking to you right now, Andy. Just Aaron Rodgers potentially being the same level of human being that we all are is kind of like hard to wrap our brains around. So for a guy that you've heard about forever, then all of a sudden you're covering, you're watching him throw footballs, you're asking him questions at the, during media functions. How has he been like to interact with, both as a reporter and then watch him throwing around the football with that Jets green on?
The interaction's been pretty limited because, like, it's just been the opening press conference and that his OTA press conference where he talked about Jersey and all that stuff. So you haven't that's going to be really interesting to see, like, how it works when the locker room opens in September and stuff like that. I think that's when you'll get more of a sense. But he's been very cordial and friendly and seemingly helpful with everything he's been asked. So, I mean, that's been nice. And you hear the stuff from his teammates, that he's been very approachable, and I think he's going out of his way to do that. So I think you can see that, and you can see, like, there's I hate to say this, but the vibe is different. It is, like, I know it's June and everybody always says that, but it's like really, it's right. It's like the guy is clearly raising the level. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, we went to the joint practices in Green Bay, and it was like going over there and watching him. It was different the way he did things, and things were precise and at his own pace. And now to see him kind of operating like that with the Jets, it's weird and it's different. But you see, like, you're seeing, first of all, everybody is here. This feels like, training camp part A, because the intensity is higher than it usually is this time of year. And everybody just seems a little bit more locked in, and you see Rodgers is interacting with everybody too, very regularly throughout practice. It's just interesting. And obviously too, it's a very heightened in terms of I mean, I was saying the other day, there were some of these OTA practices where there were like 6 of us like reporters there. Now you got like, probably 40 cameras to start. And then all of us, national media, local media, more local media. And there's the interview room. There's not really anywhere for us you got to go in there early and claim a seat now. So everything is different and really different, not just a little bit of a vibe shift. It feels like it should feel. I mean, it feels like the Jets are more relevant than they have been in a long time, because they are. And they have a better chance to win. This is my 8th year covering the team. Obviously, this year we'll have a better chance to win than any of those years. So, yeah, it feels different because it should feel different, because everything is different.
Did you come into it with preconceived notions? Because obviously Aaron Rodgers is a very outspoken, whatever word you want to use, guy that he's not afraid to say what's on his mind, both in the world of sports and beyond it. Did you have any preconceived notions with him coming in, or did you just kind of say, hey, blank slate, I know who the guy is, but as far as me and him, this is our first interactions, we'll just build it from here. What was kind of your point of attack heading in?
Well, I'll just be honest. I'm not a football fan, like an NFL fan anymore, but until I started covering the Jets, I rooted for the Lions for years and years. So, I obviously have preconceived notions now as a reporter. And I don't know. Yeah, I was not an Aaron Rodgers fan, obviously, growing up my life, over and over again. But obviously you put away your fandom, and I people don't understand that, but seriously, I could care less about the Lions, because once you sit there and watch a game, you just don't care who wins. You just want care for yourself and root for the deadline. It changes. So you want to go in with no real thoughts or notions, but obviously he's a smart guy. He has his opinions and doesn't suffer fools, and you're probably going to have to be in your game when you ask him questions. And I think it's a honeymoon. It's a feeling out period. So I don't think any of us have any real sense of what this is going to be like. And we're not going to really know until something goes wrong and how him and everybody around him reacts to. But to be honest with you, I try to go in, you hear stuff and, heard stuff that he was, for us, good to deal with from Green Bay guys. And, everything like that seems to check out. But again, I'm not sure how this is going to look, because this is different than Green Bay, and the Jets are in this interesting situation where you got all this hope, but also they have the longest playoff drought in the major pro sports, and everything is charged. I mean, remember the Jets were 1-2 last year without Zach Wilson, and it was the world is coming to an end. So if they start 1-2 this year, I can't even imagine what that's going to look like. So it's just, there's a long way to go, and I think it's going to be really interesting. And I think I'm watching that Patriots game, week 3. That's going to tell us a lot about everything. I know the Jets are more talented than the Patriots. They were last year too, and they lost both those games. So I think that's going to be, I picked the Jets, I think, to win 11 games, but I think that's going to be a telling game.
Yeah, I think that's 100% spot on. That'll be a home game. I can only imagine what the atmosphere will be like for that game. And again, everything going in, I don't have the stats anymore, but it's Patriots have won 24 of 26. I mean, it's wild. So again, until I guess Aaron Rodgers actually does it, I think people are going to have to wait and see from that perspective. This question I'm going to ask you again you may not, it's too early perhaps with the question, but nonetheless, the assimilation process, because Aaron Rodgers coming in, he's been at one place for 18 years. He's got all these credentials that we talked about. I just go back in my mind to Brett Favre coming in as this guy and having a lot of his own kind of things. He's kind of easy to be separated from the team because it's Brett Favre here and all the other 52 players here. Has there been any sense of that, or is Aaron Rodgers, assimilating well? Again, I get this is more difficult with locker room access and things of that nature until we actually get to the season, but early impressions.
I think the stuff you see on social media is a pretty good indication, the back and forth. And I don't think it's hard to stage that stuff with the amount of content these
that's true. Yeah.
Put out. And we're out there, it's real. He's talking. It's not he's not standoffish. He's not off to the side doing his own thing. I mean, at times he is, but I think it helps a lot that first of all, he has Hackett there and he's very comfortable in terms of speaking up, because I think he has a lot of input in the offense. And then I think, I understand some of the hand wringing about he's bringing his wish list, but of course, all of this makes sense. They are banking their entire season and next couple of years on Aaron Rodgers. Like it would be insane to not check with him and be like, who do you like? And can they bring in these guys? And I'm not saying like you play some of these guys over guys who are less or who are, more qualified or better players, but like have them around to compete, have them around to explain, interpret the offense through his eyes to younger players so that he doesn't have to carry that whole load and to the coaching staff. I mean, a lot of it makes sense. I think that's making the transition, easier. But I think, there was a Twitter or an Instagram video out today where they're like, who's your best friend on the team? And you see Rodgers and Michael Clemens going back and forth. I mean, like Rodgers knows what's going on in the locker room if he already knows that like Michael Clemens is that guy that you know what I mean? So yeah, I don't think you can fake that. And also like, let's be honest, with Zach Wilson, did we ever see anything like that? And I know it's not Aaron Rodgers, but
right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like
100%.
That chemistry, and you can already see it. So he's not an aloof thing. And I thought that could happen.
Yeah, 100%. So did I. It'd be easy, I would think, for a guy to come in like that. That again, that could be a weird rub. So it's been interesting, at least so far. Again, there's more season, and when things go wrong, and see how those things are affected for sure. And at NJ Advanced Media, how often do they do that? How often do they come to you when you brought them the wish list of the things you wanted when you were? How did that process work?
My wish list. It was I mean, like, I don't even know what my wish list was. I was just like, let me golf every once in a while. So yeah, I mean, if I put together a wish list, man, like, I'm I get to work with great colleagues. That's all that matters. And I just, wish to wake up every morning. That's enough for me. So, yeah, I can't be, I'm not Aaron Rodgers. I'm older than him, believe it or not. So I'm so close. I'm about to turn 40. He's about 4 months behind me. So
yeah,
we're close to still covering a guy younger than me. But, I'm not at the Aaron Rodgers stage of my career yet. I it's a little different time frame. So I can't be making demands yet, but we'll get
fair enough. Although there was a little bit of quarterback too. You're like, I've got a great support system here, great people around me, great talent. So I can sense a few of those breadcrumbs. I didn't
say that I had nothing to do with the 2 yards in the second half during my
what was that? Did
week.
you guys know in that moment, like the Zach Wilson thing, when he said that, did you go, there's no way he just freaking said that? Was there that sense in the room immediately?
No, because I just read it as him being annoyed with how do I diplomatically say this? The way the whole thing had gone.
Right.
Let's just put it that way. So I just think he was annoyed, and I think he just expressed his annoyment and walked out of the room. And I in the back of my mind when I heard him say it, I was like, ooh. But also I just didn't, it was just I knew, I don't think he actually meant that. Like, to be honest with you,
right.
I mean, I think once he realized what it looked like, and I think we kind of saw in the locker room, the realization he was going through is he's explaining stuff frantically to other people. I don't know if I should talk about that, but you could see what was happening. So, I don't think he realized how it looked, and I actually kind of understood it. But yeah, it was a weird moment. And in the back of my head, I was like, ooh, that might be bad. And then when I started looking on social media, I was like, oh, God. Yeah,
oh, boy.
And you can't, honestly, you can't do that. You can't, you got to be better
than
that. You can't let, situations or people set you off. It's part of being a quarterback. It's part of being a human. So yeah, I think, I'm sure it's a learning experience for him, and it'll be interesting to see, what's next for him. Cause I have no idea. That is another fascinating part of this team.
This may sound over dramatic, but is that something you can come back from? Because once you say something like that, even though, to your point, I think too, I think however you want to frame it, I don't think he really meant it that way, but in the sense of the conversation, and sometimes it doesn't matter what the reality is, it matters what the perception is, and once the perception's out there, it may be over. So is that something he can legitimately bounce back from, or will the locker room forever have kind of a side glance at him?
I think the biggest problem was that, obviously you can't say that, but you really can't say that when you're not playing well. Right. So if he comes back and plays well, the thing is, when is that opportunity going to come?
Right.
Are the Jets seriously going to go into the season with him as the backup and be one Aaron Rodgers injury away from hey, locker room, this is your guy. And you have Super Bowl last, you've built a roster that's supposed to contend for a Super Bowl. Like, I have a hard time seeing that. And I think the only way, I think he can come back from it, but what has to happen is he needs to like unexpectedly get into a game and play well. And I just don't like, I have a hard time believing the Jets are actually going to let it like get to that point. Like, if he shows enough during training camp, like the fans, like that Jacksonville game was ugly. It was like a public vlogging, like on national TV. So I have a hard time like seeing what, like, if he throws 2 incomplete passes, it's going to be the boo birds are going to come out. So it's a really interesting situation. I think that's the path for him to do it. I think of what Aaron Rodgers said about like that he values Zach Wilson and really cares about him. And like, if that's true, and the Jets will kind of have to keep him, don't they? And then it does open up the possibility to it happening. So I guess that's the way it happens. But that's the only way I see it happening, because it's really tough to see it happening any other way. You know what I mean? Like, it's just
for sure. But with the way you were answering that, I'm wondering, is there some guy running in the room? I don't want to say knight in shining armor, because obviously Aaron Rodgers is QB1, but like Nick Foles, who has the Joe Douglas connections, Teddy Bridgewater, the former Jet, who said the wonderful things ahead of that first Miami game. The Jets, quote unquote, saved his life, saved his career with that opportunity. Like, is some guy like that bursting? Is that what you're expecting at some point? Or is it really the Zach Wilson trend that it appears that it is? Saleh said at the owners' meetings, of course, he's QB2 after a little mini slip up before that. Said, no, he's really QB2. Like, is he, or is something like that happening? Is that what you're expecting?
I just think, I think anything's possible in terms of, things will shake loose during training camp with veterans and stuff. And I honestly, there's been so much going on that I haven't gotten around to that lately and checked which ones are still out there who like would be trade candidates. And it's something I should look into. But I just, it's just a feeling. Like, the way so much depends on this season. It's just really hard to see them riding into the season. What if he gets hurt week 1? And then there you go. So, but also they can make a trade at that point too. So another reason, like what you were talking about earlier, why having that war chest could help a little bit. But again, I agree with you. They got to spend some of it too.
Couple of quickies before we get you out of here. The Quan thing. Robert's always been talking up Jamie and Sherwood and some of these in-house options. Rich Cimini says that Quan just basically, at a blunt level, wants more money than he's being offered. Is it going to be the same thing as last year? We get around to training camp time, they're like, all right, let's get together and figure it out. Or have the Jets really, quote-unquote, moved on and they're just going to ride with Sherwood or one of these lesser, inexperienced names on the roster as that third linebacker?
Yeah, I think the Jets are happy to let it play out. I mean, they're going to pay him what they're going to pay him, and he'll come back or not. I mean, I understand that he's like an emotional leader, and I know I think he really did help set some of the energy last year, but also, he made some mistakes, more mistakes probably than people realize, and in coverage and stuff like that. And I don't, think he's like the key to the defense. I think the Jets are handling it right, and I just think that they'll bring him back if they can get him at his price. I mean, there is a reason he hasn't been picked up by anybody else either. So again, I understand the fans like him, and I think he does bring something from an intangibles standpoint. But like right now, he's very far down on the list of priorities in my mind.
Well, speaking of key to the defense, that ends us with the final nugget. Quinnen Williams. When's this dude getting paid? Your neighbor, my brother, my grandma, everyone's getting paid that has a labeled defensive tackle, including Ed Oliver from his own draft class. Is this guy getting paid? When is it happening? We thought we'd have a little bit of a rub because mandatory minicamp, the Jets coulda, shoulda, woulda potentially find him like $93,000 if he didn't show up. Well, now it's moot because it doesn't exist. So now our next rub is training camp in mid-late July. So is he getting paid before that point? What's your sense at this point, Andy?
I think it will get done. I mean, it's just Saleh has talked so confidently about it that it's hard to see it not getting done. And I think also, like, I don't think that's why they canceled minicamp, but like, sure doesn't hurt.
Exactly.
Right. There's no point of them like getting themselves into that situation. This should be pretty simple, you would think. I mean, Quinnen. Yeah, nice. I mean, I know that there's debates out there about who's better between him and Dexter Lawrence. I think Quinnen's better. But I don't think like we're talking like it's closer to like getting closer to 25 million, not to 30. So and the guarantee, you're talking about like bumping the guarantee up a little from there. And I think that seems like it seems like, a deal that's a little bit higher than the other guys on the market and not getting all the way up to Aaron Donald money. So I don't see, like, this seems like it should be pretty straightforward. It seems like it's pretty clear, like, what a fair deal would be at this point. And the fact that they haven't got it done is a little alarming. But, you know, yeah, it's starting now. Once we get past next week, I mean, now we're basically going to be past minicamp on Friday. You start to get to, like, this is a story that could hang over training camp. And that's like, is that really how you want to start the most important season you've had in a long time? That's why I think something gets done, because it makes too much sense for it not to. But the Jets have not had good luck with their draft picks, their first rounders.
They have not. Jets Hard Knocks. Have you heard anything? Is that happening? What's
not yet. And it is interesting when you start to think about how early last year it was announced and how late we are in the game now. I have not heard anything. I just have assumed.
As all of us have. I mean, come on. Yeah.
Like, this is something I'm going to have to deal with. And I still assume that that'll be how it is, because it just, I mean, like, why would the NFL not have the cameras in there? And I don't think, like, there's going to be so many distractions this year anyway. Like, this is not, like, everybody relax.
For Pete's sake.
Jets shouldn't be that worried about this. I mean, the whole season's going to be a sideshow. It already is. Like, look at the day Aaron Rodgers strained his calf. It's like, people are like, did he break both of his ankles? And then Alan Lazard apparently died and was out for, like, the way everybody's going to overreact to everything. Alan Lazard was back on the field practicing 10 minutes later, and people are still tweeting the next day like that he was out for the season. So it's going to be an interesting year, no matter what, if they have Hard Knocks or not. So I wouldn't get too hung up on that. And if they do, just enjoy the extra entertainment. And by the way, the Jets, didn't they go to the AFC Championship game the last time they were on Hard Knocks?
They did.
Okay.
Yeah. Interesting note. Not for the people that are yelling distraction, but an interesting note nonetheless, Andy. And what are the vacation plans? It's going to be this big lull for the Jets. Obviously, training camp dates, I don't think have been announced yet, but it's expected somewhere in the 18th, 19th range. So you're going to have like a month and change here. Any big plans for what you're doing for it?
I have to go to Florida to see my parents.
Okay, nice. Yeah.
So it's going to be really hot down there.
Good luck with that.
And then I got to go somewhere else. I haven't figured that part out yet. I've been invited to Vegas next week, so maybe that'll happen.
Oh, you can't say no to that, Andy. I mean, okay.
Yeah. So,
all right, beautiful.
Very last minute trip, but yeah, why not? See some men's soccer, U.S. men's soccer. I think they're playing Mexico. So
yeah. All right. Well, enjoy. Well, Andy, thank you so much as always for joining us on the show. We'll be checking back in soon, but enjoy the time away that's coming up here, starting next week and change all the way through mid-July. It's going to be a fun, long season, and appreciate you taking the time, brother.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you having me, and hopefully you get some time off to do something fun as well.
That would be amazing. We'll see if we could get that in the cards. Again, Andy Vasquez, make sure you follow him on Twitter at Andy_Vasquez, and read, of course, all his work for NJ Advanced Media. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Take care.